Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Save Barnegat Bay YouTube channel. My name is Grace Ann, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at Save Barnegat Bay. This session is being recorded in February of 2023, and we have an amazing member of our Student Grant Committee here to give us some more information about how to write a proposal for our student grant program. So we're going to get into what that means in a moment. But you are welcome to access this video at any time to refer back to as you're writing your proposal. And each and every single year, Save Barnegat Bay offers a student grant program. So undergraduate students are eligible to apply for money to do research on Barnegat Bay. So you can check out our website under the Educate tab to learn more about the student grant program and all that that has to offer. But a part of that project is offering your own independent proposal as an opportunity to get funded. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michelle Gannon, who is a Ph.D. You're not a student. You got your Ph.D. already. So Michelle works at Drexel University and leads other research and other students through their projects. So I'll let you tell us a little bit more about your work and your accomplishments. And thank you so much for being here and putting this workshop together so that folks can put in better proposals.
Yeah, thank you, Grace Ann. So I'm Michelle Gannon. I am a postdoctoral researcher at the Academy of Natural Sciences and adjunct professor at Drexel University. I teach a variety of different classes at Drexel, including how to do research. So that's independent students and students in a classroom setting. So I felt like I was prepared to share with you all about how to put together your own project proposal for an independent project. So what we're going to go through now are all of the different steps, like how to consider what kind of project you feel prepared and want to do, how to think about writing, like the very beginning stages of writing your proposal, and then how to actually put your proposal together. So what I'd like to do is that I'll navigate here to, there we go, navigate here to what the Save Barnegat Bay webpage looks like for the student grant program. So I have this URL at the top that I guess over this video you might not be able to see or might not be able to click on it, but you can go to that URL to find this page. And then down here at the bottom, you'll see student grant application. So click there, and that'll take you to this page. So we're going to have scrolled down quite a bit here to the independent submission section, where you see all of this. You enter your first name, last name, and then let's scroll down a little bit. So I thought I'd spend a minute talking about how to find a faculty mentor. So you are presumably just finishing up high school or already in college. There are probably a lot of professors that you interact with on a day-to-day basis or semester to semester. Maybe some of them are doing work that really interests you, and you might need to dig a little bit deeper into the work that they do than just the class that they teach, because they might be teaching ecology, but they actually study a very specific niche, and that niche might be exactly what you want to go into. So go in, talk to your professors a little bit more in depth than just the basic subjects that they teach, because if they are an environmental science professor, that means that they might have something very, very specific that they study, and that might be a little bit more up your alley than you think. So the faculty advisor should be somebody from the university or college or your high school where you are currently located, or if you're just leaving high school, it could potentially be somebody from your high school that can act as a faculty advisor. So talk with that person about your interest in this program, and you don't necessarily have to go to them with your finalized idea and ask if they'd like to be your faculty advisor. You can go to them and say, I want to do this program. Can you help me find exactly what I should be thinking about, because they probably do, if you're at certain universities, they probably are working in Barnegat Bay to some degree, and they might have an ongoing project that will fit exactly what you need. And you can work on part of that as your independent project. Okay, so below that, scroll down a little more, and you'll see this submission section. So I'll draw your attention to this project proposal, especially where it has the narrative description. So we'll zoom in a little bit more here. So in this narrative, you need to include a 250 word or less abstract, statement of purpose, introduction, experimental design, your outcomes, bibliography, and whether you have other funding sources. So this is a pretty standard requirement for a proposal, and this is a great practice for you to go through and put one of these together, because as you get into doing more sophisticated research when you're in college, like in your later years of college or into grad school, or even after grad school, you're going to have to do this. This is a great opportunity for you to walk step by step through this this procedure. Okay, so we're going to go into each of these a little bit more in depth. Okay, but first, before we talk a little bit more about this, I am going to explain a little bit more about what is required for the project. So some project musts. So it must occur within Barnegat Bay and its watershed. So you have probably seen a map that looks like this a number of times, or throughout your entire life. So this is Barnegat Bay and where its watershed drains to. So this is the general area you should be focused on working in, especially in the water, but I believe you can also focus on areas around there. So maybe Grayson can correct me if I'm wrong. So your project also has to coincide with, say, Barnegat Bay's mission, which is in a nutshell. So this is also another link, but you can find this at the State Barnegat Bay website. So to restore, protect Barnegat Bay and its ecosystem, to be a strong and independent voice for the bay throughout the watershed, and to also focus on natural, recreational, and economic resources. So hopefully your project can fall into one of these: restore, protect, or be an advocate. And then it also has to pertain to a current Barnegat Bay issue. So I found at the bottom here this other link to a PDF from the New Jersey DEP. This is where I pulled a lot of these ideas from, but you can find other ideas in other places. But some of the current issues in Barnegat Bay, at least as of, I believe this is a couple years ago, they are sea nettle management, stormwater runoff and reduction and elimination, shellfish restoration, submerged aquatic vegetation, vegetation restoration, pollutant reduction, marsh preservation, biological monitoring around Oyster Creek, and nutrient monitoring in Toms River. So you might notice that some of these current issues are covered by a couple of the other projects that say Barnegat Bay Student Research Grant does address, but that doesn't mean that you can't also propose to do an independent project, especially if it is looking at something from a different perspective, or looking at the topic from a different question. So these are some current issues. There are a lot of other ongoing issues that you can focus on as well. So some of these issues we can think about in terms of the project design. So when I am advising students, I don't ever want to see somebody work on a project that they just generally have no interest in. So if you have always been repulsed by fish, then do not decide that you want to do a fish research project. But maybe there's some kind of question you have about Phragmites, and you've always loved plants and you've been pressing plants for your entire life, then that's probably somewhere better suited for you to focus. So think about what you actually like. What are the things that you like to go out into the bay and do? Do you like to go kayaking or on a boat, or do you just go fishing, or go look at something really pretty? Is there anything in particular that you have expressed interest in? So that's where I'd start. And then perhaps you go and you speak to your mentor, your faculty advisor, about what you're interested in. So if you are really into chemistry, you've really liked your chemistry classes, maybe you go talk to a chemistry professor or some professor in your department, and you ask them, I really like chemistry. I really want to focus a little bit more on chemistry, and I want to do a project to get some independent research experience to prepare me for grad school or prepare me for the working world in a research position. And let them help you find the right question and this area where they might have a little bit more expertise. So that's definitely one place to think about for your project design. Also, think about the news. What's going on in the news? Because you might go to some of these like New Jersey DEP websites that are updated as of 2018, 2019, but maybe for what you're concerned about, maybe there's something that's more recent going on. Maybe you have, maybe you've seen something in the news, or you have an interest, and you can go and you can actually do some, I don't want to call it literature review because it's not literature, not peer reviewed, but you can go to your local newspaper and they've written up a number of articles about a subject. So that would be another good place to think about, a topic and a concern, bring that back to your mentor. And after you've focused in on some kind of research question, some topic, that's when I would turn to Google Scholar and do a literature search for previous research into your subject. So if you were interested in chemistry, your chemistry professor said, yeah, I would love to work with you, and I think that you should focus on chemistry in marshes. And you go to your local, or the local newspaper, you find a place where they're questioning maybe some nitrogen storage in marshes. You can go to Google Scholar and start doing your literature review there, where you can type in exactly all of those words. Nitrogen storage in location marsh. And I bet at least some papers will come up and talk about that. And those are where you're going to start to try to identify a knowledge gap. So take your literature search and you're going to turn that into a literature review. So this literature review should be a section of your proposal that collects key sources on a topic and discusses these sources in conversation with each other. So this is to synthesize them with the ultimate goal of identifying the knowledge gap. And that knowledge gap will then direct you to really hone in your research question, develop your hypotheses and your objectives that will help you test your hypotheses. So I have a colleague, Dan Drexel, who showed me this quote. So I want to read you this quote. It's from Kenneth Burke, The Philosophy of Literary Form. So this is a metaphor for literature reviews. So imagine that you enter a parlor. You come late. When you arrive, others have long preceded you, and they are engaged in a heated discussion, a discussion too heated for them to pause and tell you exactly what it's about. In fact, the discussion had already begun long before any of them got there, so that no one present is qualified to retrace for you all the steps that had gone before. You listen for a while until you decide that you have caught the tenor of the argument, then you put in your oar. Someone answers, you answer him, another comes to your defense, another aligns himself against you, to either the embarrassment or gratification of your opponent, depending on the quality of your ally's assistance. However, the discussion is interminable. The hour grows late, you must depart, and you do depart with the discussion still vigorously in progress. So to summarize this metaphor, it's as if there's a party, a lot of people are at this party, and they're all talking about some topic. The topic started before you entered the party, and it continued after you finished spending your time at the party. But no one ever stopped to give you a rundown of what was happening overall. You have to do that for yourself. So that's the literature review. You have to push pause and go to all of these different people that are in that parlor at that party and figure out, what are you saying? What are you saying? And this other person, what is that person saying? And synthesize everything that they're saying to make it make sense to you, make it something that you can translate to another person. So the way that we can do that is with a synthesis matrix. So I definitely recommend doing this as you're just starting out working with a new subject. So essentially what you're going to do is, as you read a new paper, so open up a spreadsheet, whether you use Excel or if you use Google Form or Google spreadsheets, Google Sheets, possibly. So open up one of those, and for each line, make each of those lines each row should be its own paper, its own author, and then the subject. So whatever that subject is, as you're reading, if you're reading a paper and they talk about subject X, make a note, especially if that's something that's going to help you as you're thinking about what subjects or where your knowledge gaps might be. So if it's something that seems interesting to you, make a note about it in your spreadsheet. And then when you come and you read the next paper, if that same author, if that different author, that different paper mentions the same subject, then you make a note about that in the same column on your spreadsheet. So as you're reading, you're building this big matrix of different authors and different subjects, and you'll find where they overlap. And as you begin to write your literature review, which will be part of your introduction, and you really need to do this before you can get moving on other things, but as you are doing this, as you're writing your literature review, you can say, authors 1, 2, and 3 all agree on whatever. You might not phrase it quite like that, but you might say, let's say, the sky is blue, authors 1, 2, 3. So something like that, where you're not going to say, author 1 says that the sky is blue. Author 2 agrees that the sky is blue. Author 3 also agrees the sky is blue. So you're synthesizing, where you might find that there is some disagreement under these subjects. So maybe author 1 says, the grass is green. Author 2 says the grass is brown. And author 3 says, I've noticed that in the summer the grass is green, and in the winter the grass is brown. So you might have a synthesized thought where, author the grass is green in the summer. Author and cite author 1 and author 3, and then maybe you'll say, however, the grass is brown in the winter, and cite author 2 and author 3. So rather than having 3 sentences to describe what these 3 different people have just said, you're synthesizing this, you're figuring out where people agree, where people disagree, and that'll help you identify your knowledge gap. So it'll guide you to where people may disagree, and maybe that's going to be what you just said you're going to focus on for your research, or it may help you realize that every single author has glossed over something or forgotten about something. Maybe something new came out. Maybe they just discovered that, hey, the grass is actually painted in the summer. So maybe that's going to end up being where you focus your research. So doing this, creating a synthesis matrix, will help you identify the knowledge gaps. It will help you figure out, don't waste time doing X because author 1, 2, and 55 already did it and they found the same results. But you might want to focus on X plus Y because no one has actually studied that before. And you'll be able to then develop a testable hypothesis and a list of objectives that you can try to accomplish to help you test the hypothesis. So to go into constructing a hypothesis a little bit more, this table is from a paper that I really like. It's Turbeck et al. 2016, and the DOI is on the bottom here, so you can go find it. But this table is pretty helpful. And I really like that you can create, from an observation, you can just simply write down an observation, develop then a research question around it, and then think about a testable hypothesis. And then from the hypothesis, you can make some predictions, what you think might happen, but you might be wrong because that's how science goes. Okay, so for example, we're going to start out with an observation that smallmouth bass are often found in different areas than largemouth bass. Okay, so that's my observation. And then I want to create a research question around that. So I'll just reformulate that observation into a research question. Why do smallmouth and largemouth bass occur in different areas? So that's the question I want to answer. So it's not a hypothesis. I need to formulate a hypothesis based on this question now. So my testable hypothesis then is smallmouth and largemouth bass occupy different feeding niches that occur in different places. And from here, I might make predictions, like I predict that smallmouth bass will occupy X feeding niche, while largemouth will occupy this other one. So this is great. This is a good example. If we test this hypothesis, we want to be able to say, I accept the hypothesis or I reject the hypothesis in favor of a null hypothesis. So our hypothesis, smallmouth bass and largemouth bass occupy different feeding niches that occur in different places. We can find that this is supported. We're never going to be able to find that it's prove that it's true, because that's not what we do in science. We find support for our accepting or rejecting our hypotheses in science. So I can accept this hypothesis and show my support that they occupy different feeding niches in different places. Or I can reject this hypothesis in favor of a null hypothesis. So I might also have a list of other hypotheses that are the opposite of this. Maybe smallmouth and largemouth bass occupy the same feeding niches that occur in different places or the same places. So you can have a list of multiple null hypotheses. However, for the purpose of your proposal, I would follow this format, write it out in your proposal in paragraph form, where you have your observations, or you have the support, the reasons, observations other people made perhaps, or what they've found, that will then be turned into a research question in the next sentence. And then the following sentence, you can have your testable hypothesis. So you can say, here we test that, or here we test the hypothesis, or here I test the hypothesis of smallmouth and largemouth bass, blah, blah, blah. I predict that smallmouth bass will eat this. So that will be your statement of purpose. And that will then come before your introduction on this proposal. So you're starting out your proposal here, just really blatantly stating the problem, clear and concise. You are telling the reader exactly what you want to do, what the research questions are, what you're going to test, and then you're going to go right into your introduction. So you probably have already introduced the topic, but you're still going to have to go back and provide the synthesized background. So even though, say a couple slides ago, you already did your synthesis matrix, you've already put this together to figure out where your knowledge gaps were, you're now going to use this. You're going to actually write this out as your literature review. Oops, here, as part of your introduction. So you have your statement of purpose that is pretty clearly written out here, and then just have your synthesized backgrounds about your subject, and also throughout and at the very end, maybe reiterate again, why is this related to the Save Barnegat Bay mission? Why it should Save Barnegat Bay really get behind your research? Because I assure you that they want to if it's related to their mission. So just make sure you tell them, make it very clear. Okay, now you're going to focus on experimental design. So here, you're really going to describe your methods and also include study sites, spatial, temporal, any kind of other information. So this is essentially like a methods section. So for this section, I'd really start out talking about your site description. So where are you taking these? What are you doing? Like, where are you doing your work? So whether you are going out and taking pictures, or you're going out and collecting water, or you're going out and collecting animals or plants, or maybe you're going out and putting something somewhere, where are you doing that? A map might be helpful, especially if you include like a north arrow, a scale bar title, the latitude and longitude. Some of that can be very helpful in a map. Although if you do include just a Google Earth map, that's okay at this level also, because I don't know if everyone's going to have the access to do some really cool mapping. But you need to include relevant details about this site also. So if you are going to go out and you're going to, let's say you're going to collect plants and do plant pressing for some reason throughout the summer, we may not need to know about, how frequent the frogs jump through that area. Trying to think of something that wouldn't be quite related. Let's say if you are going to go out and measure the dissolved oxygen in a marsh, we probably want to know what the ambient temperature is. We probably want to know a little bit about the other chemistry, but we probably don't need to know. Let's see, I can think of a reason why a lot of things are relevant. We probably don't need to know how many cars drive by the road a mile away. So there are relevant data and there are irrelevant data. So make sure you are thoughtful about what you do and don't include. You probably can find some site information, site descriptions from the New Jersey DEP, from previously published papers. I think it's the partnership for the Delaware Estuary often describes a lot of different locations with these very interesting parameters. So there are a lot of different, very interesting different ways you can get site descriptions where you don't actually have to go out and measure temperature every day for a month before you submit this proposal. Okay. And then your next section should be materials and methods. So what are your samples? So I've given you a couple of different examples, like maybe your samples are pictures that you take. Maybe they're plants that you collect, or water. You're going to eventually analyze something with that water, and your data are going to be essentially like your materials. So what are your samples? How are they going to be collected? If you're going to go out and you're going to collect sediment from the bottom of the bay, How are you going to do that? Are you going to take a boat? Are you going to take a kayak? Are you going to use a ponar? Are you going to use an Ekman dredge? There are different methods to do this, and some of them have different implications. So just make sure you plan for what you're going to do exactly. If you say that you're going to go out and collect sediment from the middle of, the 5-foot Barnegat Bay depth, wherever your samples are going to be coming from, and you don't think about, well, maybe I need to find someone that has a ponar that I can borrow, then that should be something that you're considering as you're submitting this proposal, or at least you know that you need that, and you know that you have people at Save Barnegat Bay who will support trying to help find what you do need. And with the committee, everybody on the committee knows somebody who knows somebody and can probably try to help you figure out finding the materials and methods and doing the work. But you need to be aware that you need them for us to be able to help you. So then I would describe your field methods. So we talk through your field methods a little bit. You're going to take a kayak out and take a sample, and this is what you're going to do. Put it in a freezer or measure it the same day. And then talk about your laboratory methods. So what do you do after you get it back? So this is chronological. So what do you do when that water comes back to your lab or to the Save Barnegat Bay lab? Are you going to analyze it for chlorophyll, or are you going to measure the suspended solids? What exactly are you going to be doing with your samples once you get them back? Maybe you took pictures of something and you have a lot of different pictures, and one of the methods that you need to focus on is how to correct those pictures for color, or correct them for sunlight, or whatever it might be. So describe these methods, describe what you're going to be doing. And then finally, include something about data analysis. So once you have your data, you have this spreadsheet filled with 40 different data points. What are you going to do with them? You can't just turn that in and say, well, that's the end of my project. There's some kind of analysis that you're going to be doing with that. So it might be statistical. So let's see, data analysis. So we could do descriptive statistics, and maybe you're going to describe these data. And I like this website, Data to Viz, where you can look at the ways to different ways to visually present your data, kind of like I have here. So I thought this was more related to descriptive statistics, where I have a histogram here showing it's describing just the frequency of something, example of what that might look like. You could do other descriptive statistics that are not visual, like describe the average and standard deviation. And at this point, you're just proposing that you're going to do this. So you still have time to, once you start collecting your data, to figure out a little bit more about what you need to do. And you can always add more, but I would definitely include some basic guidelines for yourself that you want to do. So what do you want to describe about your data? And then are your data going to be able to help you infer anything? So can you draw conclusions? So with a scatter plot, like we have down here, you have two different parameters plotted against each other and the relationship between them. So where they fall, so we can describe that, the relationship between them with a linear regression. And that will help you understand a little bit more about, whether one is dependent on the other or not, and if that's significant. And you can't ever say the word significant without statistics. So make sure you do statistics if you want to say something significant. Okay. And then this is another website that might help you when you're thinking about exactly which kind of statistics might be helpful for the kind of data that you plan to collect. All right, finally, I would think about those outcomes of the project that you're doing. So who is going to be impacted? excuse me, who's going to be impacted let's say you're doing a project where you're looking at nitrogen in marshes, and the people who live around there are actually going to have their lives become a little bit healthier because of the project that you're going to do. So that's somebody that's going to be impacted. But maybe there's a farmer that won't be able to put as much nitrogen on their corn crop. So that's somebody else that's going to be impacted. But there might be alternatives for that farmer, and you're essentially, improving the lives of thousands of other people. So think about the outcomes of this work. Who is going to be able to use this work? So in that scenario, if you have nitrogen you're putting on a crop, maybe there's going to be legislation that comes from that. So there has been in the past in Barnegat Bay, where they have taken data and then they restrict the amount of nitrogen that's allowed to be put on crops, especially in certain times of the year. So will your data that you collect be something to that caliber? It might be. And if you are thinking about that now, it's more likely that you're going to make that impact in the future when you do get to that point. You'll know, okay, this is going to be really important for me to contact the governor or the local mayor of a town. So think about that now. And then when you get to the point in the project where you should be talking to those people, you'll be a little bit more prepared. So then who finally are the stakeholders? Who are the other people impacted? Other groups of people? Maybe it's plants. Maybe you're literally, saving the last of a endangered plant, doing something to protect them. And maybe that leads to other ecosystem services, all of this. So what are the actual outcomes of your project? So include that in your proposal for this section. All right, and now finally, I wanted to talk about bibliography. So you'll notice in the rubric for the independent projects that APA format is required. So to help you out with that a little bit, I recommend that before you start your literature review, download a citation manager. So I've used Zotero. So all of these up here are different, just different popular citation managers. So if one of them is something that you've used before and you're more comfortable with, definitely go with that. I've used Zotero and I recommend it to my students to use Zotero. So all you really need to do once you download this to your desktop, so there is a web version, but download it to your desktop because then you can use it within Microsoft Word or within Google Docs. And all you need to do to add a paper to Zotero is copy the DOI and put it directly into Zotero, and it'll upload everything that it needs for the bibliography. And then as you are going through and writing out your proposal, when you get to a place where you want to cite something, rather than typing out the name and everything, there's an in document like extension on Word and on Microsoft Word and on Google Docs, where you click on it and it'll take you to your Zotero. You type in the author's name that you want to cite, and then you add the citation. It keeps track of all of these that are in that document. And when you're finished with that, you can say, all right, give me my bibliography. And it will give you bibliography in the APA format that you have asked for. And you don't have to do much else. Maybe double check it, but you don't have to spend the hours putting together a bibliography that's going to be essentially super easy now to put together. This is very innovative. All right, and then finally, this is something I want to consider more of like an acknowledgement, but also part of the planning, and especially useful for Safe Barnegat Bay to know about. So by now, you've already established you have a mentor, you know what you want to do. So are the methods that you want to do going to be essentially funded by the mentor? And this might be as simple as, they're going to let me use lab space in their lab, or they have a YSI meter that I am going to be able to take out because that's something you don't need to worry about finding. That's funding for your project, even if it's not directly funding you. So the funds that you receive from the independent project are not supposed to be spent on gear. We want to make sure that your gear is already taken care of before you try to get out into the field. So will your mentor be, is this a project that they have ongoing and they would like to continue and have some boat access or something like that? So if there's anything like that, then just consider that in this section. All right, and you notice that we didn't talk about an abstract yet. We need to have an abstract, but it's at the very beginning. Don't write your abstract until you have everything else figured out. Write your abstract at the very end. So start out by stating your research question and then summarizing your sample method. What will your data look like? So if you're expecting that you're going to have chloride data or salinity data, and then you end up with chlorophyll data, summarize what to expect here. How are you going to analyze it? So are you planning on, maybe you're going to do a linear regression between your salinity and chloride data, which should give you a very good result, very strong correlation. So is that, are you doing a linear regression? Are you going to do an analysis of variance? Are you going to do t-tests? And then also think about, again, what is the greater impact that your results are going to have? So get this out there. That's really the important part right now. Get this out into the reader's mind. Hey, this project is going to help all of these different people. So get that out there and say that right now. Okay, so then this should be 250 words or less. That's pretty standard for an abstract. So it's not very long. Put it right at the beginning. And then some other details. So I thought this was maybe a little bit useful. So the tense you should use is the future tense. You haven't done any of this work yet. You plan to do all of it. So say, I propose, I will do this, all of that. Your voice. So while passive is the most traditional voice, active is more interesting. So you can maybe try to be a little bit more active in what you are writing, because it'll make whoever's reading your proposal a little bit more likely to continue. And it will all be read. Well, they'll just hold the attention a little longer. So active, the fish swim towards the reef. The fish swims toward the reef, where you're really focusing on the fish there. Or passive, the reef is approached by the fish. So I would go with the active because it makes more sense and it is a little more interesting. And then, all right, let's see, perspective. So this, I'm hoping that this is obvious, but you most commonly will use third person. So they, it, they, whatever. However, first person is okay also. So that can be I or we. I propose do this. We will test the hypothesis. But you should not use second person. So don't say, how this is, or whatever you might say. So you can say it or I or we, but don't say you. All right, and then figures. So figures can be really useful, and I think I have recommended that you include a map, even if it's a screenshot from Google Earth. Include it, and then cite them in your text. So when you're in text, typing that out, and you want to say, okay, well, I'm going to go here, and you're referring to your map, actually put in parentheses Fig 1 with just Fig.1. And then in your figure, you should have a caption that's figure. So it should be the whole word figure 1. And it should describe a little bit about your figure. And this should all be in chronological order. Similar with tables. So if you, let's say you are going to go to 5 different sites, and rather than have a map, you want to have a table with the name and the latitude and longitude and something else about it. You can say table 1, and then in your text, cite table 1 when you're going to talk about it. But make sure that if you do include figures, you actually cite them, because otherwise they are irrelevant and just taking up space. So use your figures wisely, but they can be very, very helpful. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think this is my last slide. Where to start? All right, so you're going to start by thinking about what kind of topic you want to do. What things are you into? What questions do you have? Then go and discuss this topic with a mentor, somebody at your school, somebody that you know, somebody that, maybe it's somebody that you know from a different organization. Maybe if it's not somebody from your school, you can talk with Save Barnegat Bay about if that person is in the right position to do that. So find a topic and then find a mentor. So once you have a mentor, talk about this a little bit more with them, and then begin your literature review. And you're gonna at this point download Zotero or whatever other reference manager, unless you can do it on your own. Do your synthesis matrix, identify that knowledge gap, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now select a research question, testable hypothesis, and objectives. So once you have this all set, then you're really just rolling on here. And then you're going to think about how to test that hypothesis, and write your methods, write your materials, determine what the data will be collected, how it'll be analyzed, how is this work impactful, what are the outcomes that are expected, and then make sure before you submit anything, I know there are probably some other key factors here, like letters of support and your grades and everything. However, I would not submit without going back and reviewing the rubric that is provided on the Save Barnegat Bay website. So read that rubric, grade yourself, maybe give it to somebody else to grade, and make sure that you submit something that you are going to be enjoying working on and that you feel passionate about and are proud to do. Yeah, so I believe that's all I have here. So I will thank you. I look forward to reading all of your proposals, and thanks, Grace Ann, for having me.
Michelle, thank you so much for offering that expertise. I know I learned something, and yeah, back when I was doing research on a fairly regular basis as a high school student, and reading literature in college and stuff, I didn't know about all those amazing tools you can use to help you with citations. That's like one of the worst, almost worse than data analysis, is having to go through a source and cite it correctly. So that's really cool that those tools exist. And I just want to reiterate, Michelle did a great job of introducing our student grant program at the beginning of the program. But just to say that, yes, it's a lot of work to put in an independent proposal, but independent proposals are granted $1,500 at the end of the summer. And so, yes, it's a lot of work, but potentially you're, getting extremely valuable experience as an undergraduate student, where these opportunities as an undergraduate student are far and few between. As a paid opportunity, you might be able to volunteer in a lab at your university, but it's unlikely that you're going to get paid to do it. So $1,500 is given to a student who does this work, and that money is not used to pay for the materials in your methods. It's not used to get transportation to and from your site, if it's a boat or something like that. that money is for you to use how you see fit once it's awarded to you at the end of your project. So generally the awards go out sometime late August, early September. So potentially that could help you pay for tuition or books for the next year. You can buy whatever you need, for your new school year coming. So this is, not to be confused that the award would then have to be used to pay for the supplies that you write into your proposal. If for some reason you feel like your proposal might include tools or things that are really expensive, or things that maybe don't immediately look obviously available at the Save Barnegat Bay website or among our colleagues and peers, please reach out to us ahead of time submitting your proposal so that we can make sure that we have what we need to provide you. And if we don't, we can maybe guide you to another method of conducting that research so that you can in fact do that research. Because we don't want to say no, we definitely want to say yes. And we want to fund new and interesting ideas and projects, and we're always looking for those things. But obviously, if you're unsure if we have the resources for to provide for you, there's absolutely no harm in reaching out to me or any of our student grant committee, which I'll list on the website before any of that happens. In addition, I just want to mention that there are some independent projects that even though you get to write the proposal, there are groups that are funding those projects knowing that you can select their topic. So let me explain what that means. For instance, in 2023, so if you're watching this video in the future, you'll check our website for any specific independent project updates. But this year, for instance, we know that Reclaim the Bay, which is a completely separate nonprofit, is looking to fund an independent student. So what that means is they're saying, we'll donate the money to make sure that our topic gets addressed in the independent research. So they are asking students to look into the food source of shellfish. So as an independent proposal, you can come up with your question based around what clams and oysters are eating in Barnegat Bay. So it's a little bit guided in that you're kind of getting an idea, like a seed, but it's more open-ended in that you get to work with the organization who's helping with the funding to develop your question based on their tools and their resources for this project. So, if you're kind of in the dark and you're like, well, I really want to try to be independent on this, but I'm not totally sure what the issues are, here's a great stepping stone to kind of have a little bit of something to work off of so that you're not just, coming out of, working from complete scratch. And then if this all seems like a lot and you're like, I'm new to research and I'm not ready to be an independent researcher as an undergraduate student, you can always reach out and apply for our team projects where you are among other students. You get paid a little bit less money, but it is an opportunity to taste all of these things that Michelle is describing, but you're with your peers and colleagues, and you get to work through it together. And there are mentors here that help you through that so that the process can be more streamlined and a little more intuitive. And then maybe next year you'll feel confident that since you lived through it once, maybe you have a new idea that you'd like to propose to the student grant program. And then you can refer to this video because it will be recorded forever and ever. And you can refer to this video and get those pointers on how to apply for an independent project. So Michelle is amazing, and she's been here to offer her expertise as a postdoc. Clearly she's done this in much higher orders and levels. And I know for a fact, so speaking for you, I've spoken to you offline, but I know that Michelle is willing to help you if you have questions. If I can't answer them at Save Barnegat Bay as an educator, Michelle is absolutely willing to help guide you through your application process. And we also have another individual on our committee who's not here right now. Her name is Bianca. She's also in similar, she runs in similar circles to Michelle in that she has also done her PhD. I was actually at her last hurrah. It's called a defense, right? I actually was there and we cut cake and she got it and it was great. It was awesome. So anyway, Bianca is also in a slightly different topic area than Michelle, but is also willing to help with proposal writing and specifically as well statistical analysis. So if you're deciding like, I'd like to try this research, but I'm not sure how to do statistics, that's step B. Step 2, we'll get there as well. So I just want to cover those points because I know there's a lot here. And I just want to continue to instill confidence in our applicants so that you know the resources are available to you, who to ask for what question, and to reach out with anything that you need. So again, thank you, Michelle, so much for being on and sharing your expertise.
Yeah,
You're
thank you for
wonderful.
having me. That was
You
great.
got it.
I'm excited to see proposals.
Yeah, so the committee will review the proposals. So this year in 2023, the deadline is March 24th, but generally it's the third week of March. So if you're watching this in the future, the deadline is generally around the same time. Check the savebarnegatbay.org website, click on student grant program. Again, you'll find all the information you need there. If you have any questions, reach out to me directly. My email is education@savebarnegatbay.org. We can't wait to see your ideas, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.